April 29, year 2019. In the name of Allah, the Beneficent, the Merciful. The seventh miracle of verse number 21 of Surah number 21, Sureh Anbia. This surah has 6 miracle verses, and in the past few sessions I have talked about them. Today, God willing, I will talk about the relations between these 6 verses, and this is the 7th miracle of this verse. Surah Anbiya, which has 112 verses, talks about the prophets that in the past, in a long time, God has sent for guidance of the human being, and talks about the result of their guidance, and says that most of the people have not obeyed God. And by the way that he talks, it shows that in the future also most of the people will not obey God. I talk briefly about these 7 miracle verses. I have talked about them in the past few sessions. One, the first miracle verse is verse number 30. It has 2 parts. One is creation of the world by explosion of the Big Bang. That includes the creation of the earth. And number 2 is the creation of the human. So this verse talks about the creation of the world, the creation of the earth, and the creation of the human being. The next 3 verses, which are verses number 31, 32, and 33, talk about God making the earth suitable for the human being to live in it. And because all talk about the same subject, they come one after another. There is not any distance between these verses. The second miracle verse is verse number 31. It says that God made anchors on the earth, that is in the plates of the earth, and they said that earth has plate tectonics activity. God has made anchors above them, that is at the areas that the different plates come in touch with one another. And that is where the very high mountains are, the highest mountains of the world are on these areas. And that sticks the plates to each other, and the verse says that it prevents them from tilting to the sides. If the plates would tilt to the sides, not only the human being, but life could not come into it. Also, the same verse says that God made broad ways on the earth. the mountains, these mountains which are the anchors of the earth, do not go up vertically. But in each area, first there are small mounts, then after a distance there is a higher mount, after another distance a higher mount, until we reach to the highest mounts of these mountain ranges. This way there are broad valleys between them. If these valleys were not there, the human being would be imprisoned in the area that he was living and could not go to other parts. But because of these broad ways, the human being can go to any part of the earth that he wants. Three, the third miracle verse is verse number 32. After saying that God made the earth suitable for the human being to live on it, then he talks about the lower part of the sky, which is quite close to the earth, and says that God made it a roof, like the roof of a house. This roof prevents the life on earth from the dangers coming from outside. And there are two major dangers coming. One are the stones, which are called asteroids. Asteroids are, most of them are very small, like powder, or bigger ones become the size of the sands, but some of them are big, and the biggest one of them can have several kilometer diameter. And if they come to the earth, they can destroy the life. The other danger is the charged particles, especially charged protons, which come from the stars. They are very, very strong, and if they reach to the earth, they will destroy the life. And this roof protects the life on earth, prevents them from coming to the earth. Miracle number 4 is verse 33. It goes a little bit further away, or even much further away, where the moons and the suns are. It says that God brought about the night and the day, which are necessary for the human being to live. If it was all night, or if it was all day, human being could not survive, could not come into existence at all. And also the moon, the sun and the moon. Without the sun and without the moon, again the human being could not come into existence. And it says that all of them move in a circle. The night and the day move in a circle, they alternate. The sun becomes, the night becomes the day, and the day becomes the night, and this will continue. Also, the sun moves around the Milky Way galaxy, the galaxy that we live in it, and the moon moves around the earth, and with the earth moves around the sun. Miracle verse number 5 is verse 44. The verses that I talked about them so far, from 30 to 34, that is 5 verses. All of them come one after another. First is verse 30, then 31, then 32, until 33 and 34. Because all talk about creation of the world, the earth, the human being, and making the earth suitable for the human being to live in it. Verse number 44 talks about the power of God. So it is completely separate than those 5 verses. And it is number 44, 10 verses after verse number 34, the last one of the first 5. This verse talks about the power of God that pushes the mantle. Mantle is made of a stone, but because of the heat, it is semi-liquid, it's not even a stone. But this semi-liquid, God pushes, of course, through the rules that he has made for the world, pushes it with such a strong force that against the continental crust, which is quite thick, and in some areas it is 50 kilometers thick, pushes it through it and brings it out on the earth. And in the sea, pushes it against 5 to 10 kilometers thick oceanic crust, which is made of basalt stone and is much, much stronger than the granite stone, which is on the continental crust, pushes it through it and brings it out. And then, after coming out, continues pushing, and the mantle which comes out pushes the continental crust and also at the ocean, the oceanic crust pushes it to the sides, both sides. And I gave an example in that verse has talked about the African continent, which is a very large continental plate, and it is quite thick. God is pushing the mantle through it, and if it continues in the future, this mantle will separate the two pieces, will make African continent to two pieces, and will push them aside from each other, and there will be an ocean between them. And in the sea, that verse talks about I talked about the Atlantic Ocean. In the Atlantic Ocean, the crust is coming out at about the middle of it, and it is pushing it to the east and to the west, to the sides. At the east, it is pushing the Atlantic Ocean's crust 5 to 10 kilometers, very hard basalt stone, which is much, much harder than the granite stone, which is on the continents. It is pushing it to both sides, while there are several kilometers of water on them also. And this water has a lot of weight. At the east side, the ocean of the Atlantic Ocean, the crust of the Atlantic Ocean is going when it has reached the continent of Africa, it has bent 45 degrees and it is going under continent of Africa. And when this continues, it goes deeper and deeper and becomes part of the mantle. It melts and becomes part of the mantle. At the west side, it is doing the same thing. It has bent at the American continent. It has bent 45 degrees down and is going under the American continent, and it is going down and becomes part of the mantle. Miracle verse number 6, that is verse 104. In Surah Anbia, that has 112 verses, verses number 97 to 104 all talk about the day of the resurrection, day of the judgment. The last one of them is this verse, verse number 104. And it talks about the day that God will terminate this world and will bring the day of the judgment, and everything that has happened in this world, including everything that human being has done, every human being has done, will be in it. And it says that that day will come in a certain date, and it will not be even 1 hour earlier or later than the time that God has decided. In short, verses number 30 to 34 talk about creation of the world, creation of the earth and human being, and making the earth a safe place for human to live on it. Verse number 44 talks about God's power, and verse number 104 talks about ending the world and bringing the day of the judgment. On verse number 44, which is about the God's power, I talked about pushing the mantle against the continental crust and the oceanic crust. One part that I forget, I'm sorry, I didn't say it. At the end, this verse says, will they, by they it means the non-believers, will they overcome? It means, will the non-believers overcome the power of God? And it is obvious by what I talked about, what happens in that verse number 44. Even if the power of the non-believers was billions or trillions times more than what it is, they would never overcome the power of God. Thank you very much, and God bless you.